Nick, you've been reporting now on the ground for 2 weeks, and you said, and I have to look down at my notes for this because it's striking, Europe has not seen this sort of bombardment in 80 years. You also mentioned mass graves. What's the latest here on where things stand, especially as Russia is now going into Western Ukraine?
So I think the attacks in Western Ukraine are new, and they do perhaps identify an expansion of this war, and perhaps, we don't really know why, but perhaps trying to get at some of the arms, some of the aid that's coming in from Poland into Ukraine that the U.S. and NATO countries continue to send. But you mentioned those mass graves, and that really is right now the story of this war. You mentioned Mariupol in the south. This is a city that faced war in 2014 when the Russians initially invaded into eastern Ukraine. But the war in Mariupol today is frankly medieval. It has been a week since 500,000 people had any food, had any water, had any electricity. The Russians bragged this morning that they had destroyed every bridge that led out of that city. There is no way to get aid in, and there is no way to get anyone out. And it has been 6 days straight where the Russians promised that there would be a ceasefire and instead shelled the very buildings where civilians were supposed to gather in order to evacuate. So the level of destruction in Mariupol is akin to what we saw over the last few years in Syria, and the level of suffering of hundreds of thousands of people in that city, as well as other cities, especially in the south, and a couple in the northeast as well, is just extraordinary. And the Ukrainians are trying their best to resist this Russian onslaught, and they're having some success. But in these individual cities where they are struggling so much to get any kind of assistance in and any kind of civilians out, the conditions are dire.